So I've had the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra since it launched earlier here in 2024, and it's been such a great phone. But recently, Apple launched another great phone in the iPhone 16 Pro Max, and I've had this for about a couple of months, and I want to share with you my thoughts on the two hottest phones here in the US market. So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. In this episode, I'm going to share with you my thoughts on both after a couple of months having the 16 Pro Max now. Against the S24 Ultra, we're already seeing leaks of more rounded corners on an S25 Ultra coming in a couple months, so stay tuned to the channel, be subscribed. We'll be doing speed test comparisons, the showdowns, you know the drill. The price-wise, though, for the S24 Ultra definitely felt more like it was worth it. I felt because the promotions and I felt like the price you pay with trade-ins typically comes in less. I feel like majority of people are going to pay more cash out of pocket or more even on a carrier plan for something like the iPhone 16 Pro Max. And while the Samsung is not far behind and technically can retail higher than the iPhone 16 Pro Max in certain configs, usually people will find this on a discount or get it cheaper. So for that area, I do think that Samsung has won this out. Feeling like basically the same type of premium level phone for most of the time, for most people, less money. So that's the price to value ratio there. When talking about the body and build after 2 months of ownership of the 16 Pro Max, I have to say I like the build, the shape of the 16 Pro Max. It's mostly because of the rounded corners, and I think that's going to change incredibly quickly once the Samsung gets updated to the S25 Ultra. But definitely, I tend to prefer holding this phone more just because of the shape of it. Same goes for something like a Pixel or even a Samsung S24 Plus model, or you could even say some of their more standard like S24 FE, S24 line of phones. I kind of feel like prefer the shape of holding it every day. In terms of the build on the edges, they're kind of similar in this respect. They both have titanium builds, so that's kind of similar, but those sharp corners are noticeable. I do like the I was going to say Note, the S24 Ultra's feel for the squared body for its uniqueness, though. There's not a lot of phones that kind of look like it, so it has its own unique shape. So I think Samsung's just going to round the corners and kind of keep its unique look, though, because it does have its own kind of look to it, which I quite like. And also, I do think that the squared body here is really good for watching video, as it feels like a really big screen. In addition to that, the S Pen, the shape really tends to work well with the S Pen because the S Pen turns this into like a little notepad, and the more screen area, the more squared it is, the more it feels like a little notepad. So for this area, I do like the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. It's pretty good in that respect. Weight-wise though, the S24 Ultra and iPhone feel kind of similar in the weight. They're both pretty well balanced. They don't feel too much different. I don't feel massive differences between them in the weight. The Samsung, pretty well balanced for its size, but it's a little bit awkward to hold just because of its shape. So if you have small hands, this thing is going to be a monster of a phone to carry around. But so is this one at 6.9 inches. This has also been a little bit of a monster 2 months later. So what about the display experience? So this one's kind of like one wins in one area, the other wins in the other. What are those areas? Well, for the Samsung, I feel like it wins in the anti-reflection. There's just way less glare on the screen. However, Samsung also made this phone a little bit less vibrant than before, and then they added the vivid mode to bring back the vibrance. You can raise the vivid slider, and it gets super colorful. However, I do feel like the iPhone's calibration is a little bit better. To my eye, I just think I like the colors. It just looks a little nicer to me, the saturation. Samsung had that better before, but with this new anti-glare, anti-reflective looking screen, it looks a little bit different. So we'll see what they do for the S25 Ultra. They kind of had a better calibration, I feel like, on the Z Fold 6 even. But I like that you have all these features in here where you could change between vivid, you can change between the different resolutions. You have font sizes on every phone, but nice little settings in here to mess around with on the Samsung. Also, the brightness slider is pretty low right there, pretty nice. You have icon for shield, dark mode. You have similar features to this one over here in true tone dark mode as well, so not a big difference here. You also have this enhanced comfort mode, but it definitely changes the color of the display. Generally speaking though, I do think the Samsung has probably one of the best, if not the best, Android smartphone displays out there. It's super tack sharp, it's super bright, and it's just super big. At the same time, it's also super anti-glare, anti-reflective. You don't really see too much reflections on the display. So it's playing at the top of the game. And then on top of that, if you are reading articles or whatever, it's a 1959, so it's plenty wide enough. Also, if you turn it into landscape, it can do those portrait orientations. Even on the home screen, you can go through your apps. It takes really good advantage of that split screen over here. I can go ahead and grab other applications, bring them in, flip them around, swipe through. I'm good to go. I can even bring in more applications. So it takes amazing advantage of the display, also giving you a really nice one. So display experience really good there. Now where the iPhone wins though to me is that it has a really good color calibration, really good brightness. Sometimes to me, it looks a little brighter on the standard range brightness, like the usable nits. It also seems to get a little bit dimmer. I don't like how bold the text is in iOS though. I think it makes it look less sharp, but you can lower it down and you don't see it. And if we scroll down a little bit, you'll see go lower the brightness. Dynamic Island is still sticking out like a sore thumb, in my opinion, but some people might disagree. They like the usability of that. Also, one thing about the Samsung, I do tend to prefer that the Samsung does have a smaller punch hole than some other Android competitors. So if you see right here, the punch hole definitely looks a little bit smaller than some of the other competitors out there. Doesn't really get in the way too much. This has some nice usability and functionality, so it also is fun. To be fair here though, I do like that both have always on display, and I do love the ultra thin bezels of the iPhone 16 Pro Max. It's pretty impressive. It's nearly touching the edge of the phone. There's almost no bezel on here, and it's what allowed it to achieve. And that's what allowed it to achieve this slightly larger screen than the Galaxy S24 Ultra. Also, both of them have really nice 120 hertz, although some people say that the Samsung looks smoother, some say that the iPhone looks smoother. It's pretty close these days. I do think the animations tend to look a little bit more pleasing on the iPhone even now, but sometimes the scrolling looks faster on the Samsung across the 120 hertz experience. So some people will say that the iPhone just kind of feels slow by comparisons to some of these newer Android devices. And I could see where they're coming from. The Android phone just feels really snappy. But visually, I think the iPhone can look slow to some people, but also it's visually pleasing. So I have to give them that, to be fair. So overall, both of them, you can't really go wrong. I haven't had many major issues with either. And if I had to just choose one on the area of the display, if I'm being honest with you, I'm probably picking the iPhone here. And the reason why is because I like the calibration without having to tweak the settings of the display. And while it doesn't have anti-glare, I do tend to prefer that it's slightly larger with these thinner bezels. And I like using the Dynamic Island, even though I really don't like that it's taking up space. I like using Dynamic Island. It's just a more comfortable, pleasing display to me, whereas the Samsung is just a really strong panel, but it doesn't look quite as good in terms of the calibration. That's really what set it back for me. So when it comes to software, on the Samsung phone, you know this is going to be One UI over here. We also do have Galaxy AI, which Samsung was way ahead because they had tons of AI really early on. But I wanted to wait to do an updated video until Apple launched Apple Intelligence, which is now available here on the iPhone. They also have the new Siri right here. So if we go ahead and hold down, you'll see the new Siri. We also do have ourselves Summarize in the Safari. We also have the rewrite tools on here. So a lot of nice AI stuff. You also have a lot over here with Chat Assist Interpreter. You can do call recording now on 18.1. 18.2 beta is already out, but still, you can do that here. And there's a ton you could do with Galaxy AI as well. At the end of the day, these features are cutting edge. However, I don't think everyone needs them just yet if they're not on board with using AI just yet. But it's nice to see we're on the bleeding edge of the AI software on both of these phones. Apple definitely catching up now, but I feel like some of the experiences are still further ahead. Like you can still use Gemini even on the Galaxy series phones. You can use Gemini. On there, over here though, we don't have Gemini, which is not really onboard AI. It's kind of an app here, but you can use ChatGPT, which is great on both of them. Again, you could use that on most phones, which is still AI. So it's Is the AI for everyone? Probably not, but it's nice that they're both kind of like neck and neck now in that area because Apple finally launched theirs. So that's quite nice. Other areas of the software, I still tend to prefer that Samsung has more theming options, more customization options. And while we have more here than ever before on iOS, if I go ahead and hold down, I go ahead and customize, I go here, I can tint the icons, I can move them around, stuff like that. I can also easily make them large like that. They do get rid of the text underneath, but generally I like the split screen. I like the different, app trays I could change in Good Lock module over here. So if I go to Good Lock, which you could download, you can redesign the Galaxy phone. It's just really fun to play around with this phone. It also is a powerhouse in features. So if I go over here to settings, I scroll down, I go down to advanced features, you'll see there's a ton to do here. If I go to S Pen, I also have a ton to play around with my S Pen, which just doesn't even have over here on the iPhone. We can finally now move our icons wherever we want on the screen for the iPhone though. So that's a nice little upgrade. We didn't have that before. And overall, at the core experience, it's still kind of iOS, but you have a little bit more theming, a little bit more customization. Software still gets updated more regularly and consistently on iPhone, whereas they're doing it monthly here on the Samsung, which is fine, and it gets updated pretty regularly, but it seems to come in and roll in a little bit more often on the iPhone still. Both of them do have very long software support, with 7 years here on the left, and we do have 5 years or so, which is not actually promised by Apple. I don't really make their promises on how long, but it's typically around 5-6 years on the iPhone. From a performance perspective, both of them are incredibly fast. Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 on the left, and we do have the Apple A18 chip, A18 Pro chip on the right. 8 gigabytes of RAM, 12. I wish we had 16 on the left, and I wish we had 12 on the right. 4 gigahertz clock speed. And we have up to a 3.4 gigahertz there on the fourth cluster. When we do look at benchmark histories, though, there's not much of a way for the S24 Ultra to take a win. Even on its highest benchmarks, it doesn't come close to the iPhone. The iPhone typically wins out in benchmarks on Geekbench. But the story changes a little bit in 3D Mark. When we do look at some of the results we are able to produce, the Samsung can actually come very close to the newer iPhone 16 Pro Max, which is saying a lot for where the S24 Ultra was when it came out. It was leading the pack, which is why I'm excited for the S25 Ultra and its performance. Generally, though, I think that the iPhone feels a little bit more consistently smooth day to day, but it's almost nothing to speak of. There's still like this faster scroll here for Samsung, which some tend to prefer. But at the end of the day, they can both launch apps. You've seen in my speed test, they can both run the software and what you need to do on the day-to-day very quickly. One area where I think Apple does pull ahead, though, is in some of the rendering and performance of some of these apps like LumaFusion, which you can also download on the Android platform as well. They do have iMovie and stuff like this. But some of these rendering apps, some of the games, I feel like the Apple iPhone pulls ahead a little bit, but just by a little bit. The Samsung is right there with them now. So performance-wise, I'm going to have to give it to the 16 Pro Max a couple months later, but the Samsung is still so close, it's almost indistinguishable. When it comes to cameras, 2 months later, I do have to say I prefer the look of the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra's cameras. I think the layout is super clean, super nice layout here. I like how it goes straight up and down, super symmetrical. I really love that. This camera design has been around forever. It's not really that impressive to me. We did get an all-new camera control button, which after a couple months, I don't even think about it anymore. It's not really something that makes me miss it when I'm using the Samsung. Now, I did a dedicated camera comparison between these. Check it out. I'll leave it linked down below. But at the end of the day, I find myself really wanting to use the Samsung only if I need extremely long zoom, because the results it produces to me are a little soft and muted comparatively. Well, not muted, but they're a little softer in the tone. I do like that though for certain scenarios. Like when I don't want too much detail, I don't really like the iPhone photos. I really prefer the Samsung. For food photos, I really prefer the way the Samsung photos produce. I also think it produces potentially better night photos sometimes, and I love that they have pro video options in here. It just makes it a much more fun phone to use. You can change things like white balance, you can change the mic, speed, all that good stuff. And then I don't have to actually leave the camera app to play around with the sections. I could go to 50 megapixels, 12. I can also change the timer. I don't got to go around digging around. It's all right there on the top. I really love that. Also, I like that their front-facing camera is better in terms of it has higher megapixels. It also just has more feature set here, right from the camera itself. You could back it out. And I tend to prefer a softer look here on the front camera, and that's mostly because I don't want my selfie showing all the details of every little pore and every little skin line I have or whatever. I don't need that business. I need a nice looking selfie. That's what I want. So cheese, you could say cheese on there too. Now when it comes to the iPhone, I always want to pick this up for video. If I go over here to video, let me go over here, click video, you'll see video just always in focus, looks amazing. I would actually argue this video might look better than my camera I'm using for the video right now, but I don't tend to prefer to use iPhones to take video mostly because they don't use SD cards, which makes it harder for me to transfer to my computer, which I don't like. But the video looks phenomenal. It looks like a pro camera on here for sure. The photo is also really good, but for me, sometimes it's a little too HDR, a little too detailed for me. So not that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying I like sometimes the way the Samsung photos look. Sometimes I like the way these look. The skin tones also are not always accurate to me. On this phone, the Pixel does a better job. In addition, they do have RAW mode and things of that sort. Spatial video is also a newer feature for Vision Pro stuff. So if you're not using Vision Pro, which a lot of you probably aren't, it's probably not a big deal. And I don't think the camera control is gimmicky if you use it. However, for some, it's just a pointless feature that nobody's going to use. But if you do use it, sometimes like when you have your hands full and you just want to like use this little camera capture button, it could be good, but the phone shakes sometimes and photos do come out a little bit blurry sometimes. We have macro modes and action modes. Overall, this setup is really a pro setup in your pocket. It really, really is. And it's so impressive compared to where cameras were just like 10 years ago. On phones, they were absolutely atrocious compared to where we're at now. So the advancement is leaps and bounds ahead. Now the selfie camera, they haven't upgraded this thing in years. It looks exactly the same as like 3-year-old cameras. Maybe the processing's a little bit better, but overall the actual front-facing selfies don't look very different from like 14 Pro Max, 15 Pro Max, 13 Pro Max. They need to upgrade that selfie camera. They really do. They haven't done that, but it's okay. So, and it's not okay in the terms that they don't need to upgrade. It's okay in the sense that the phone still has a good front-facing camera. It's not a deal breaker. But I do like the Samsungs a little bit more, for sure. You can also do 8K video on here. You're not capable of doing it there, and both can support 4K 120 FPS, although this one is going to be in the Pro mode. This one's going to be in its own standard modes. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about battery life. Now on the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra, you are having a little bit of a larger battery capacity, but as always, on the iPhone, you don't always need the highest battery capacity due to the nature of iOS's efficiency to be able to eke out some really good battery. The iPhone, to me, 16 Pro Max is another 13 Pro Max year where we're getting more than a day, sometimes stretching all the way into 2 on the battery. I tend to prefer Samsung's battery saving features though. They are quite nice. Let's go over here. We'll scroll down. We'll go to battery. Hold on. You'll see over here we have battery protections, which you also have on the iPhone. And then we have different charging settings. And then we go over here to power saving modes. We have all these different things we could tweak. I tend to don't turn it on that much because I don't usually need it. But if I do, I like that. The Samsung doesn't last as long. After 2 months, I just have to be point blank with you. It seems to last like an hour less than for me than the iPhone. But neither of these I leave the house with a lot of charge and worried about getting through the day. These phones both easily go through the whole day. And medium users can expect 2 days on both of these phones. Although if you want slightly better battery life, I would say go with the iPhone here. After owning these for 2 months, in the area of audio performance, the Samsung tend to get a little bit louder to me, but only slightly. But it didn't sound better at its full volume than the iPhone. It tended to sound a little nicer on the iPhone. But the Samsung does have similar USB-C here. We also do have a SIM card tray, as you can see. That's quite nice. You have DeX support here as well, so you can use a monitor. You can also use this as a display port, and Apple's with the Sequoia on Mac now does the mirroring for the iPhone, so you can go ahead and just kind of mirror your phone up to your Mac, which is pretty cool for the new iPhone ecosystem. With the Sequoia and the iOS 18, you could just put the phone on the screen. Kind of nice. to be honest. Emergency SOS, texting via satellite. So the iPhone really does drive it home with some of those features there. For some special features, of course, the Apple Watch experience. If you got an Apple Watch Ultra or a Series 10, whatever, these things go really nice with this, as does the Galaxy Watch experience and the Galaxy Buds over here. And you also got Samsung laptops, so both have a pretty nice ecosystem offering as well. Weirdly enough, the iPhone actually has a newer modem in here, the Qualcomm X75 modem on board, giving this, actually, I've been seeing a little bit better reception strength on this phone than my Samsung, which is really weird for me to say. That usually never happens. 5G was pretty neck and neck on both of these on the go. Neither of these are unreliable phones. As phones, these are some of the best out there. They really are. Some of those, you'll see some of these phones that are cheaper, giving you a better deal, some $300-$400 phones, but they don't usually have as great of modems or reception strength as these higher end Samsungs and iPhones nowadays have. So that's something people don't talk about, but it's actually a fact. Some of my budget phones don't perform quite as well in that area. And lastly, I want to say, does the S Pen really make a difference here? And the answer to me is no, unless you use this thing a lot. I find myself not using it that much for anything other than just jotting down a few notes. But if you do use it as a stylus to use things on the screen or also take notes, draw, things of that sort, this can be the deciding factor between them. And it's really a strong suit for Samsung being the only one offering this. The pen seems to just always be that deciding difference for some people, not having a stylus there. But it doesn't seem to matter for a lot of people either, even though it's been around for years. Is there any cons overall before we get up out of here? I would say the only one for the Samsung is I wish it was just a little more comfortable to hold. And I think they're going to fix that with the S25 Ultra. They're also going to make it a little faster, a little bit more RAM probably. And we'll probably see improvements to the camera as always and a better tuned display. Now for the iPhone, is there any cons to this one? And yeah, there is. It needs a better front facing camera. I would like to see dynamic island shrink or go away in the future. It really is a little bit annoying there. I would also like to see maybe a little bit more of a redesign to iOS. It's kind of, we got customization now, Apple Intelligence. Probably not going to see that next year, but it would be nice to see some new icons and stuff, or give us the ability to change the look of the icons. Maybe I'm asking for a little bit too much over there. And also, what else can we improve here? Probably more RAM. 8 gigabytes of RAM on a phone that costs this much is ridiculous. We should have like 12 or 16. But other than that, 2 months later, I pick up either of these and I am blown away by the tech that's in my pocket these days. It is unbelievable compared to where we were just a few years ago. So I'm super excited to see where the industry continues to go forward. And I'm super stoked for the S25 Ultra. So stay subscribed. I'm going to have it day one on the channel, or hopefully the first day it goes available for sale, I'm going to have it. So stay subscribed because we're going to go neck and neck with those as well. I'll catch you on the next one. If you found the video helpful, entertaining, informing, click the like button for me. If you want to see more content similar to this, drop your suggestions and any questions, comments, concerns on these two, drop them down below. I'll catch you on the next one. Nick here. Be sure to be well and peace.